Welcome back to Remembering the Fallen, here on Real America's Voice.
Welcome back to this Memorial Day special, where we remember the fallen and honor their sacrifice. Someone who understands these issues and words perhaps more than most is our very own Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Doug Collins. As a U.S. Air Force Reserve chaplain, Secretary Collins has ministered to our service members since 2002. He completed a deployment to Iraq in 2008 and remains a colonel in the U.S. Air Force Reserve. Secretary Collins, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule today to speak with me about Memorial Day.
I'm glad to be with you.
Well, Mr. Secretary, firstly, we'd like to make the distinction between Memorial Day and Veterans Day, but inevitably, Memorial Day operations heavily lean on your department and its oversight of national cemeteries. First of all, Mr. Secretary, what does Memorial Day mean to you personally?
Well, it means a lot because it means those who gave, as President Lincoln described, that last full measure of devotion to our country. They gave all. They fulfilled the commitment that they made when they raised their right hand and said that they were willing to fight and unfortunately lose their life for this country. I think it's something that we should never take for granted. And for me, especially the VA, we have the distinct privilege and honor of being, for many of those, the last place that they are resting in our cemeteries. But also, it's one of those things, as you said, we need to very much distinguish between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Veterans Day, we get to serve, we'll celebrate all who serve. But on Memorial Day, it's a very special time in which we dedicate our commitment to those that gave all for this country, to commit to ourselves that we'll continue to fight for this country just as they gave.
Absolutely. Well said, sir. And Mr. Secretary, as I mentioned, your department oversees a great degree of the military commemorations that will happen over Memorial Day. When you look out at the vast hills of graves at a place like Arlington National Cemetery, what do you think about?
I think about the stories. I think about the stories behind them. And I think this is the one thing that I want Memorial Day to always be about is, yes, it's we've unfortunately secularized it into the start of summer and school getting out and everything else. But those families who have loved ones, and especially in the last 20 years, our GWAT generation who have lost loved ones, those missing places at the table are still real. Those missing ball games for parents who are not seeing their kids grow up or go to the prom or go to graduation, those are still very real in their minds. So for me, it's the stories behind it and just seeing how normal, average people in America who stepped up when the nation called gave their life in that service. So it's just something, I think when you look at those gravestones, when you look at the times, I often say this a lot when I've been a pastor now for a number of years, and I always used to say at funerals, we see a birth and we see a death date on these stones, but it's not those two dates that we should remember the most. It's what is in the middle that we should remember, and that is the dash or the space in the middle, because that actually represents the life that was lived.
The dash is so important. That's absolutely right, Mr. Secretary. And I actually wrote a song about that, so I'm so glad you brought that up. You mentioned your work as a pastor. I'd like to focus for a moment on your past work as a chaplain to the military. Soldiers see a great deal of injury and death, and it has been your job to minister to these individuals. What do you say to comfort those who have lost fellow brothers and sisters in battle or on patrol?
Well, I think it's a matter of how each are dealing with it. Some people will, go inside themselves. They'll just internalize it. They don't want to talk about it. You need to get those people to a place in which they're not hindering themselves or hurting themselves by bottling up too much. You got some who are very emotional. I think one of the biggest questions I've always gotten in over the years, not only in civilian pastorate, but also in the military and overseas and deployed, was the question of why comes up. And it's this, why did this happen? Why did my buddy happen? Why did she die? Or why did this happen? And I try to turn them to a different question. It's not why, but what. Too many times we'll ask why, and there's not going to be an answer to why, but what? What do we do now? What after this event can we do now? What is going to be our next step is where I try them to focus, because too many times in grief, you can get stopped or paralyzed in the moment. And what I'm trying to do is connect them to away from the why, which will take time to answer, but to the what of what they can do next.
And that's a great response. I'd never thought about it that way, but people often question why. I mean, I think that's a reasonable question to have, but the what and what you do after is incredibly important. Some of those headstones that we see, sir, in cemeteries involve deaths of soldiers to suicide. While Memorial Day honors those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, how do we create a better country where veterans can live the rest of their lives without creating headstones much too soon from suicide?
Yeah, there's many of those. Their death by suicide are painful reminders of a long injury that happened when they were serving for many of them, and it was a culmination of not feeling that they had hope or they didn't see any future. We've got to do a better job of welcoming people. We've got to do a better job of understanding that PTS and traumatic brain injury and other things, and just also just the general nature of being in the military and what you see and how you go about it is something that in our society we should actually do more to just, sometimes it's a matter of just talking to people. It's a matter of a cup of coffee. It's a matter of saying, hey, I hadn't seen you in a while. How you doing? So all the veterans out there and all the people who served, I encourage you, reach out to your buddies. If you've not talked to them in a while, give them a call. Just say, hey, how you doing? It doesn't have to be a confrontational thing. It's just keeping up, just as you would when you were in a unit. Everybody is accounted for. We got to make sure that our veterans, both civilian or helpers and those who have served with each other, are making sure nobody's left behind outside of the military as well.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, I was in Publix the other day and I saw a guy who had his Vietnam apparel on, and I talked to him for a little bit and he started talking about Agent Orange. He said, I don't want to hold you up. I said, no, you're not holding me up. I mean, if we can't take a couple minutes out of our day to talk to someone like that who endured being spit upon when they came back, they deserve more than that. So I completely agree with your sentiment. And I think people need to get to know veterans more than just saying thank you for your service. Well, Lieutenant Colonel Edmund Whitman said, that nation which respects and honors its dead shall ever be respected and honored itself. In your estimation, sir, do we respect and honor our dead and in turn command respect and honor ourselves as a nation?
I think we could always do better. And I think it's something for those that served and for those of us who have lost loved ones or friends that we know of. I think it's something we can continually strive toward. It's an interesting part. We are the nation in the world that does strive. We tried to leave no one behind. We still remember our POWs and MIAs, which will always be there until last accounted for. I think those are the kind of things that we need a reminder of. But sometimes, look, it is honest, and time will fade and memories will fade, and it's not as prevalent as it was maybe a few years ago. But remembering those in these monuments, remembering these in the cemeteries that you pass, especially our veteran cemeteries, these were folks who served. Many of them died in the action and combat. They're there because they fought for something bigger than themselves. And I think that's the bigger reason that we need to do is living for those who died.
Yeah, we can always do better, that's for sure. Mr. Secretary, now that you are running Veterans Affairs, has it changed your perspective to oversee that department and what that means in terms of how we honor our fallen, since even in peacetime, we still have service member casualties?
Oh, yeah, it does. I mean, I think it just makes it more personal to me. I'm often said, and I've had several veterans talk to me about it. I always talk in terms of my veterans and my employees here because I personalize it, because that for me makes it very real. So the veterans, I don't care if you're serviced by the VA or not, you're still a veteran. To me, you fall under the VA, whether you take our services or not. So it's very important for me to look at it from a perspective of how do we continue to engage the veteran community and engage the veteran families, survivors, caregivers as we go forward. And especially in the part that you mentioned and from our National Cemetery Administration, where we actually, I love their motto is we have one chance to get it right. And for those family members and loved ones who come to that cemetery for their loved one, whether they died in service or in active duty, or they died, many, many years later, it's still a very act of giving and an act of sacrifice that they have given to this country. And for us, it's our chance to make sure that that dignity is preserved and that, basically respect for what is done for this country is never forgotten.
Yeah, and that's why the subtitle of this special is called Remembering the Fallen and Honoring Their Sacrifice. Sir, lastly, if you could impart one sentiment to those who are watching today in terms of, as a nation, how we should treat Memorial Day and what our thought process should be like, what would you say?
For every freedom you have, Memorial Day symbolizes the sacrifice that some gave for you to have that freedom here in this country.
Well said. Well, Secretary Doug Collins, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. We appreciate your service. We appreciate your continued service as a chaplain and, of course, now as Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Take care.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back with more of this Memorial Day special right here on Real America's Voice.